But there is so much more to the Diocese of Southern Ohio than the financial resources, which present, as we all know, both great blessings and at times considerable challenges. So I'm anxious to serve in a new and significant way as our diocesan system welcomes a new leader, and we continue to seek opportunities to witness to God's love across every part of this diocese, from east to west and north to south. I'm thankful to be able to offer myself for this ministry, and I ask for your support. I'll be at a family wedding in Nebraska on Saturday, but will be participating in the convention by Zoom. Look forward to seeing you that way. And if you end up electing Meredith and not me, I assure you, you will still have made an excellent choice. Thank you.
David, thank you very much. I appreciate that. They also elect one layperson for the standing committee for a 3-year term. The nominees are Barry Feist, Holy Trinity, Cincinnati, and Emily Ross, St. Peter's, Delaware. Barry?
Yeah, thank you, John. Well, I just wanted to start out by saying we have 190 people on this call, so thank you for your dedication and spending the time not only tonight but at convention. The diocese couldn't operate without people like you, so thanks for that. Yeah, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time, but I was on diocesan council for 3 years and then was elected to standing committee right in the peak of the pandemic in 2020, and spent 3 years, the past 3 years, on standing committee, and it has been an exciting time, as everybody knows. So just to recap a little bit, in diocesan council, I was involved in some of the vision mission work that we were doing for the diocese at the time, and then on standing committee, I was pretty heavily involved in the survey and the data analysis, trying to find out, what we needed in a bishop. And of course, at one point we held ecclesiastical authority. Some of you approved of our job and some of you didn't, but we had it, and we, thankfully, Bishop Smith came in, and now we get to welcome Bishop White, which I think is some very exciting times. I would like to continue to be involved, to be able to do some of that. In addition, I'm in Cincinnati, so I'll admit right up front that I'm not out, further out in the diocese, but I do belong to a very small church, probably one of the smallest in the diocese, and I believe that brings a unique perspective to the job. And then just a few things you can see in the document that I have online. I'm an environmental scientist by training, so I have a lot of interest in creation care and the environmental justice work that's happening, and part of the Becoming Beloved Community work. I think that's extremely important. Would love to see that pushed on through. We have a lot of great postulates, people trying to, in the line to become deacons and priests, and some really strong talent there, and that would be very exciting to participate in. And I think, just being with a small congregation, I think, as we've been saying, the ways to measure the impact of a church or a congregation is not necessarily by its size, but what it's able to do for the community. And I think that would be something also to continue to bring on through. So again, thank you so much for joining, and peace and blessings.
Thank you, Barry. I appreciate it. The other nominee is Emily Ross from St. Peter's, Delaware. Emily?
Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Ross. I'm from St. Peter's, Delaware, up north in the diocese. I have been a member of St. Peter's for over 20 years, and I am excited to be running for standing committee. My parish priest, Father David Kendall Sperry, who has also been a member, nudged me to consider running. I have been a lifelong Episcopalian. Currently at St. Peter's, I serve on the Altar Guild and in the parish choir, and am the chair of our finance committee. In my professional life, I am a school administrator, working with curriculum and professional development for teachers and grant writing. In the larger life of the church, I am heavily involved in General Convention. I have volunteered since General Convention was in Columbus in 2006. And I will be in Louisville this summer when we elect a new presiding bishop to help make sure that process runs smoothly behind the scenes. Uh, in terms of standing committee, I'm very excited about our new bishop. And in full transparency, I do have to say that I have had an up close and personal relationship as the daughter of a bishop for the last 15 years. My dad is the Reverend Steve Lane, who is currently Bishop Provisional in the Diocese of Rochester, which is where I grew up. And shout out to my confirmation sponsor and a nominee also on this call, Mary Carson, who was our parish organist when she was attending Bexley Seminary. So thank you, and good luck with all your choices at convention.
Thank you, Emily. The next is for trustee of the diocese. Will elect one clergy or one layperson for a 5-year term. The nominees are the Reverend Derek Fetz, Northern Miami Valley Episcopal Cluster, and Robert Shelley, St. John's Worthington. Derek?
Thank you, John. And good evening, Church in Southern Ohio. My name is Derek Fetz, and I serve as the lead priest of Our Savior Mechanicsburg and Epiphany Urbana, in addition to serving as the missioner for the Northwest region of the diocese, which includes 17 congregations of all sizes and in many contexts. I also serve as the second vice chair for the Proctor Board. There are 6 main reasons I'm called to serve as a trustee of the diocese. Firstly, stewardship of resources is a passion of mine, and I have led 2 churches with multi-million-dollar endowments and other investments to grow their capacity and align the resources to support the identified missional priorities. Secondly, the new bishop needs people associated with the financial components of the diocese who can stay committed to the financial necessities of our common life and creatively and boldly apply resources to the emerging missional priorities. Another reason being the election of a new bishop gives me renewed energy and excitement to serve in this diocese. I'm confident in the current spirits movement in Southern Ohio. The last 3 reasons are based on years of experience in this diocese, serving under 3 different bishops and 2 other dioceses. My commitment to transparency of how money is spent and its origin has always been a top priority of mine. Another reason being my background in public relations gives me the ability to explain financial matters using accessible language and formats. And lastly, my background as the former director of operations for my family's company afforded me the opportunity to work with finances on both macro and micro levels to keep the company financially solid. If the Spirit moves the convention to elect me as a trustee, I pledge to work gracefully, meticulously, collaboratively, and creatively with the bishop and the rest of the trustees on behalf of the entire diocese. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Robert Shelley, St. John's Worthington. Robert?
Good evening. I'm a candidate for a trustee position. I want to share a little bit about my background. I grew up in the Methodist Church. My parents have been active members of their various congregations as long as they were together as a husband and wife. And my mother passed away just recently at the age of 99. My sense is that the trustee has a very important responsibility in the Diocese of Southern Ohio. We have been very blessed with generous donations from a number of different predecessors, the proctors and others as well. And those resources can be very profitably put to good use in fulfilling the mission of the church. We need to be able to respond to creation care, to various other resource issues in creative ways and solve the problems of the diocese and the communities in which parishes are residing. My personal history is a faculty member at Ohio University for 40 years. It was the point at which I became involved in the Diocese of Southern Ohio, and was a member of Church of the Good Shepherd in Athens from 1971 until I retired, and we moved to Columbus in 2011. My professional career focused on the study of how groups of people solve problems and the way they organize themselves and create structures to be able to solve problems. So I've got some experience working in that with a particularly strong interest in working with people who start out life together as strangers and eventually become very committed to solving the problems that they're confronting. I am particularly interested in solving helping to solve some problems for the diocese, and I look forward to being able to do so. I generously ask for your vote. Thank you.
Robert, thank you very much. I appreciate that. The next position is elect one layperson for a 3-year unexpired term. The nominee is the Honorable Tyrone Yates from St. Andrews, Cincinnati. Tyrone?
Thank you. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you as a member of the parish of St. Andrews, Cincinnati, Evanston. St. Andrews is a historically Black parish of growing diversity, open and welcome to all. I'm here to ask you humbly in this convention to consider electing me to fulfill the unexpired 3-year term as a trustee of the William Cooper Proctor Fund. In this role, I will faithfully work with the other 4 trustees to manage the funds and properties and to follow the bishop's directions on recommendations of stewardship and spending consistent with the terms and intent of the trust and the canons of the church. I am currently the interim member of the trustees of several months, appointed by the trustees and the bishop, replacing now diocesan treasurer Nadja Richardson. I am the current senior warden of St. Andrews, a member of the Herbert Thompson chapter of the UBE, a member of the board of Minority Empowerment Initiative Trust, the Taft Lecture Committee of Christ Church Cathedral, and the Diocesan Reparations Task Force. By way of background, and I think some qualifications, I am a former 2-term vice mayor of the city of Cincinnati, and for 9 years served on its finance committee. I'm a former member of the Ohio House of Representatives for 7 years and served on its Committee on Finance and Appropriations and Ways and Means. I currently serve as a Hamilton County Municipal Court judge for almost 14 years. I better not forget to say that I am married to Karen Lynn Yates, a Miami University administrator, and we have 2 beautiful, lovely adult children, Aiden and Clark, and Zuri, our new puppy of 9 months. We live in Sharonville, Ohio, but I was raised on my uncle and aunt's farm, working farm, in Brown County, Ohio, and thus I share a love for all parishes, rural and distant. I humbly ask you to consider me for trustee in this convention.
Thank you, Tyrone. Appreciate that. For trustee of the Church Foundation, we elect one clergy person or one lay person for a 5-year term. The nominees are the Reverend Sally Missler, missionary for the River City Churches, and the Reverend Vicki Zust, rector of St. Mark's, Columbus. Sally?
Good evening. Welcome to my laundry room, which was my COVID office, and I've just hung on to it. I like it so much. I'm Sally Schisler, as John said, from Portsmouth, Ohio. So I'll be seeing many of you this weekend at convention and look forward to that. As he said, presently I serve as the missioner for River City's churches in the eastern part of the diocese. I also serve as a part-time supply clergy at a Lutheran church in Ironton. I retired it's almost been a year ago, from Christ Church in Ironton, where I served for 21 years. Over the years, I've served on a lot of things in the diocese, including church. I was the first woman to serve as a church foundation trustee. I've been on diocesan council. I've been on the commission on ministry, and I'm a member of the proctor. I recently served as the chaplain to the nominating committee for our new bishop, which was an honor and wonderful experience. I'm seeking another term on the Church Foundation because of all the things I've done over the years in the diocese. Being a member of the foundation has been very satisfying and rewarding. I come from a place where small churches often defer their maintenance due to the cost, and being able just for us to be able to make a grant or loan or a combination of that through the foundation can make a real difference in the life of the congregation. Caring for our facilities is part of our stewardship of the property that we have. And for the last couple of years, I've been a supporter of the physical assessment of all of our churches in Southern Ohio, which is presently underway. I think at least 20 churches have been surveyed, and a budget is being developed of the needs for those parishes. A lot of that, of course, comes from deferred maintenance. But knowing where we are and where we stand will help the foundation play a positive role. I thank you for this opportunity to talk about something I really passionately care about. It says my internet connection is unstable. I can't wait till they bring full internet services to Boondocks. I'd appreciate your vote for foundation board member. And thank you, John, for this opportunity. I look forward to seeing many of you this weekend in Portsmouth.
Thank you, Sally. The other nominee is the Reverend Vicki Zuss, St. Mark's, Columbus. Vicki?
Thank you, John. As John said, I am the rector of St. Mark's in Columbus. And in 25 years of ministry, both as a rector and on diocesan staff in this diocese and in Western New York, one of the things that I've seen is that the buildings of our congregations can be our greatest asset for welcoming new people, for sustaining the faith of current members, for practicing hospitality, for providing places for ministry, both done by our congregations and by our communities. But I've also seen that they can be the largest drain on the congregation's resources, both in terms of money and in terms of time. And the reason I'm seeking election for trustee of the Church Foundation is that the Church Foundation is the Diocese of Southern Ohio's way to assist congregations in maintaining their buildings and in helping them be a resource and not an anchor on the ministry of the congregation. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Vicki. Appreciate that. The next position to elect is the Regional Disciplinary Board. Elect one clergy for a 3-year term. The nominees are the Reverend Mary Carson, St. James, Cincinnati, the Reverend Jean Hallahan, All Saints, Portsmouth, and Christ Church, Ironton, and the Reverend Ann Warrington Wilson, Grace Church, Cincinnati. Mary? Mary? Are you on?
Yes, I am. I did
Okay.
the classic forgetting to unmute myself. Sorry about that. Let's try that again. I am Mary Carson. I am the rector of St. James in Westwood, which is a large neighborhood on the west side of Cincinnati. We are the only Episcopal church on the west side of Cincinnati and from here to Indiana. I've been here for 7 years, though I did grow up in the Diocese of Southern Ohio at St. Mary's in Hillsborough, left when I graduated from high school and never expected to come back, but God has different things in mind. I serve I've been ordained for 31 years. I served the 20 years in the Diocese of Ohio. And of that 20 years, 8 years was on the diocesan staff as transition minister and a staff person for the Commission on Ministry. So in that role, I was involved with matters of clergy discipline. Soon after I left my staff position in 2007, I was elected to the Diocese of Ohio's disciplinary board, and I served in that capacity until I moved to Southern Ohio. And not long after moving to Southern Ohio, was recruited to run for the disciplinary board here. Several years ago, you probably don't remember this because it was not a big deal, and I think it happened in the midst of COVID. But Southern Ohio joined with several other dioceses to form a regional disciplinary board, which makes abundant good sense because of the nature of disciplinary matters. So because of my background, including having served on a rather complicated hearing panel in Ohio, serving on the disciplinary panel has seemed like a logical way for me to serve the larger church. I will also say it's one of those rare elected positions in which one hopes never to be called upon to serve. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mary. The other nominee, second nominee is the Reverend Jean Hallahan of All Saints Portsmouth, who will be our host for the forthcoming convention, and Christ Church Ironton. Jean?
John, thank you, and welcome and good evening. I am the priest in charge at All Saints Episcopal in Portsmouth and the host city for the convention this on Saturday. And I'm also the priest in charge at Christ Episcopal Church in Ironton. And I currently have been working on the transition committee. I was a shepherd to one of the candidates as well. Previously, I was a tribunal judge, and I echo the same sentiment. If my candidacy is successful and if I am asked to serve, it's not something that you relish and nor do you look forward to. But I do have the academic degree background. I received a degree in canon law from the Catholic University of America. And of all things, I wrote my thesis on the removal of a cleric from the clerical state. So I do have the academic ability. I do have the experience. And if my candidacy is successful, I am ready to step in and be part of, if I'm called to be part of the board, I will be. Thank you.
Jean, thank you very much. Appreciate it. The other nominee is the Reverend Ann Warrington Wilson, Grace Church, Cincinnati. Ann? Unmute. There you are.
There I am. Good evening. I too am running for this disciplinary board. I am the Reverend Ann Warrington Wilson. I have served this diocese since 1983, mostly working in small congregations. So I appreciate all of you who do the same thing and try to keep them going and strong. I have served on several diocesan commissions, committees. I am completing terms on the Trustees of the Church Foundation. So I am looking to run for another position. And when the disciplinary board was first created in this diocese, I was asked to serve on it and did for a number of years. One of the best things about it is we never actually came to a trial of anybody. We had a few hearings, but things were managed and complaints were settled without any trials. I have that experience. I would be happy to serve on the regional board, and so I put my name in for election. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann. The other position is for Proctor Board of Directors. Elect one clergy or layperson for a 3-year term. The nominee is Tim House, Church of the Redeemer, Cincinnati. Tim?
Hey, everyone. I do apologize. My lighting is not great. I'm sitting in my van because I'm at my son's indoor soccer game, but definitely glad to take a few moments to be here with you all. I am Tim House. I am at Church of the Redeemer. I'm our minister for family discipleship. I'm running for Proctor Board because I have seen the value of camp ministry for youth in my entire professional career. I've been doing youth ministry for over 15 years, and I have been able to be part of different camps through different denominations, primarily in the Methodist Church. And so I'm just really excited for this new season that Proctor will be walking through, and the just the revitalization and revisioning of what it can become. I have heard stories of how wonderful Proctor has been for people young and old. And so I'm just really excited for the opportunity to potentially serve on this board, to just be part of that new vision, to see where it can go, and to really be able to advocate for the youth in our diocese that are benefiting from what Proctor has to offer. I want to be able to bring their voice to the table and help that be part of this new vision and new season that Proctor will be going through. So thank you all for your consideration and for your time this evening.
Thank you, Tim. Next is the Province 5 deputy to elect one clergy person. The nominee is the Reverend Michelle Blumgard, Christ Church, Springfield. Michelle?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me on. I am excited to be back in the Diocese of Southern Ohio. I accepted the call to be rector of Christ Church, Springfield. I started about 7 months ago now. But Southern Ohio is also the diocese that raised me up for holy orders about 15 years ago now. I was raised up for orders by Trinity Newark in the eastern portion of the diocese, and I sadly wound up having to leave because shortly after my diaconal ordination, to go be with family as my father was dying in Pittsburgh, and so was not transferred over to Pittsburgh, and then spent a dozen years finding my way back here. It's been really exciting these last few months to connect and reconnect, to connect with my community, my new community here in Springfield, in lots of different ways, getting to know my parish, getting to know the history, the very deep history of my parish, but also getting to know the folks in the community that surrounds me. It's also been really exciting to reconnect with a number of familiar faces, both lay and ordained, that I knew from the time that I was here. I decided to stand for election for Province 5 clergy representative because I think that there is a blessing in provincial gatherings like that. I've been part of them in various ways in the past, but a gathering like a province reminds us all that we are bigger than our individual parishes and that we are bigger than our individual dioceses. And it also gives us the opportunity to share wisdom and resources. I was blessed to have opportunities to work with slightly similar gatherings in the past for very specific reasons. I served in the Anglican Church in Canada for a while and was appointed diocesan representative to their provincial task force on human trafficking. And one of the blessings of that was that through that, we not only got to hear speakers that were at a level that we probably wouldn't have heard
in our own diocese, but we also got to share resources for big parishes, resources for small parishes, so that those who are sitting there thinking, well, how do we make an impact, got some really concrete things that we could go back and bring and share with parishes for how they could make an impact. Long before I was ordained, I was when I was in my 20s, I was an adult chaperone, taking a number of youth to our provincial youth network meeting, which helped plan a provincial youth event, and also did some pre-planning for Episcopal Youth, the EYE, the National Youth Event. And one of the things that I remember was how excited the youth there were, especially because in some cases they were the only teenager in their parish, or they were the only ones and for them to find each other and be able to share that energy and that love of God with each other is something that I've always carried with me. I think that there's great strength in all of these various ways that we are connected beyond the parish. And so I look forward to being able to represent you at Province 5 and to be able to share the wisdom of that province with all of the parishes in the diocese. Thank you very much for your consideration and your time. I look forward to getting to know this, to reconnecting with this diocese more. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate it. The other position to elect are 2 laypersons for also the Province 5 deputies. That's Edward Lucerne, St. Stephen's, Columbus, and Kathy Mack, St. Barnabas, Montgomery, whom we've already heard for. And Edward, when you finish, I have 2 procedural things to alert those who are joining us tonight relative to Saturday. So when you finish, I will do those 2 procedural things to alert us to. So Edward, you're on.
Yes, my name is Edward Lasang, and I am a congregant at St. Stephen's in Columbus. For the past 2 years, I've been fortunate to be able to serve as the Southern Ohio representative to the executive board of Province 5. And I can report from my work on the executive board, the provincial executive board, that Province 5, our province, is one of the most dynamic, hardworking, smoothly functioning, and forward-thinking of all the provinces. Before I give you some idea of the work the province has done that I've witnessed and taken and helped out with over the past 2 years, I want to remind everybody that Episcopal provinces have been around for a very long time, but a lot of people don't know. Some people still don't know what they do. A dear friend of mine at St. Stephen's, who was not raised Episcopalian a few decades ago, learned about the Episcopal Church and joined in college because she attended events that were sponsored by Province 5. She went to college in Indiana, which is also part of Province 5. So provinces can make a big difference in people's lives. Our province has been involved in beloved community, creation care, campus ministry, the issues of lay-led congregations that they're struggling to find a clergy person, human trafficking, suicide prevention, for which Kathy Mank from our diocese has been a leader, and archival research and into the history of our church. The Reverend Brian Wilbert has made an important presentation on that issue to our province about a year ago. So I'm running to be a deputy to the synod, the provincial synod, which only meets once every 3 years.
Thank you, Edward. I appreciate that. 2 procedural things to alert you to on Saturday. First of all, after I present the names of everybody for the individual positions and so forth, I will move that we elect by unanimous ballot those for whom the number of nominees are equal to or less than the positions available. The second thing to alert you to is when we vote for the standing committee, that's a majority rather than a plurality. So it may take more than 1 ballot. We've had that experience in the past, but alert you to those 2 procedural things on Saturday. With that, Bishop, I have finished my role as chair of the nominating committee.
John, thank you very much. And to all the nominees, you You presented yourselves well, and I think that we know what we will be up to come Saturday. We have resolutions to come before the convention when we meet in Portsmouth. The chair of the resolutions committee is Alice Connor. I am given to know that she is not able to be with us tonight. I think that one of the usual and customary utility infielders is going to take that role. John Johansson, are you up?
I am, thank you, Bishop. As a utility infielder, I'm happy to do this. We have two resolutions for consideration. I'll read each resolution, and then the presenter can have up to 2 minutes to speak to the resolution. And then you will have opportunity to ask any questions you may have regarding the resolution. Our first resolution, R2023-01, Congregational Life Projects. Whereas there is a continuing need to financially support both existing and new Episcopal communities, and whereas Canon 16, Section 22 authorizes the closed congregation fund to be used for congregational life projects, be it resolved that funding from the closed congregational fund for congregational life projects include the financial support of existing congregations and new Episcopal communities. And I would invite Michael Tigner of the COCL to speak to this, if you'd like to, Michael.
Thank you, John. I don't have a lot to say in explanation of this. The explanation in the resolution is pretty clear. But I did want to say that I think it makes a lot of sense to find a pathway to utilizing funds that have already been designated to this purpose. And so I think it's pretty clear that that we need a pathway to utilize those funds. And I believe that COCL, it makes sense for COCL to be designated distributor, of those funds. So that's what this resolution does, and allows us to move forward and use those funds. And I wanted to point out that the budget impact, this takes a little bit of pressure away from funds from Mission Share. So it makes sense to utilize these funds that already exist. So that's really all that I wanted to say, and I open it up for questions.
We have one question. Where are funds from the closed congregations currently allocated, and who distributes them currently?
John Boss,
yes,
would you
go
like
ahead
to speak to that?
John, are you going to speak? John Johansson, you going to speak to that?
Well, no, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Yeah, as president of the trustees of the diocese, I can explain how this works. The funds are maintained by the church foundation. The trustees are responsible for the investing of that. In the past, when we had regions, the funds could only be used for a congregation in the region in which the closed congregation had existed. We did away with that some time ago, so it can be available for congregational life projects. And if you notice, the canon reads intentionally with a capital C and a capital F, and that's a reference to the Commission of Congregational Life. The process is that the bishop and congregational life make a decision, a recommendation, and then that comes to the trustees of the diocese, who have to release the funds. And so the trustees of the diocese procedurally instruct the church foundation to release those funds for that particular project. So there's a way to oversee the investment in that. What this particular resolution does is, rather than keeping those funds only for new congregations, it opens the ability to use those funds for existing congregations, which helps us tremendously and permits us to provide the support that's needed for those Episcopal communities. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but that's the background.
Thank you, John. Any other questions?
There are none posted
All
at this
right.
point.
Then we shall move on to Resolution 2023-02, Bishop Elections. Whereas the election of a bishop in the Diocese of Southern Ohio is a rare but important event, and whereas the current process allows for a petition process for candidates to be placed on the ballot, and whereas the current process does not allow for proper vetting of the petition candidates by the nominating committee, and whereas the nominating committee is able to properly vet candidates, and where it is very costly to bring candidates to the diocese for the meet and greet sessions, therefore be it resolved that the current process of allowing petition candidates be eliminated, and that all potential candidates must submit an application to the nominating committee by the submission due date. And I would call upon Michael Newman at this point as the sponsor of the resolution.
Good evening. I'm Mike Newman. I am a member of the Church of the Advent in Walnut Hills in Cincinnati, and I served as a member of the nominating committee for the election of the 10th Bishop of the Diocese of Southern Ohio. There's several reasons why I believe this resolution should be adopted. First, it's, I think, a responsibility of every member of the diocese to accept a role in the process, which means that everyone should hopefully read through the profile that's submitted at the beginning of the process. And as part of that, if they find a candidate who is appropriate, to nominate that person for election as bishop. That should be done, I believe, at the beginning of the process, not toward the end. Secondly, the process that we use currently is extremely thorough. There were 15 members who reviewed all of the documents that were submitted by all of the candidates, did multiple interviews with both the candidates and the references, and spent many hours evaluating the candidates and the positions that they held about the diocese. All members of the nominating committee, as well as all who participated as applicants for the position, participated in a 2-day face-to-face retreat. And that particular process was extremely enlightening for both us and for the candidates. From my understanding, the standing committee did minimal background checks and primarily looked for any red flags that might have occurred for a candidate. The time that they spent reviewing the candidates was very short. The nominating committee spent about a year with all of the candidates. The standing committee spent about three weeks. It's not fair to the candidates who have spent a year in the process to have someone come in at the end who has not been part of that process. It's also not fair to the petition candidate to enter the process late, because there are many things that would have been hopefully discovered by them as well as the nominating committee prior to that time. Additionally, it's extremely expensive to bring candidates in because of the cost of housing, transportation, and time that's involved with the actual meet and greets that happen during the diocesan election process. And finally, I believe that all nominees should undergo the entire process in order for it to be fair to everyone. So I would like to suggest that the current petition process be eliminated, and that all candidates would need to submit an application prior to the due date for the initial request. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you,
questions?
Michael. Any questions or discussion?
Yes, we have, first question is, does the resolution violate national church canons on electing a bishop?
No. The national canons indicate that decision is up to the individual diocese, and it can be determined at the convention, or it can be determined separately by the standing committee.
Next question is, in the current process, the standing committee followed the process. Are you suggesting that there were complaints, and if so, by whom, about the partitioning process?
It's my understanding that there were some concerns about the process. I have heard from a few people. I can't say that it was vast. I've also not talked to many people about it. No one has written to me individually about it, but it appears to me that the candidate process, as it currently is, does not need that petition process in order for the election to take place and to be secure.
Right. The next question, there's two different citations of canons of Episcopal Church canons. Canon 3 from both from Canon 3. The one piece of that is, unless otherwise provided in the electing diocese constitution or canons, the standing committee shall have oversight of and responsibility for any search, nomination, transition, and election processes. The second little piece that is brought up is, opportunity shall be given for nominations from the floor or by petition, in either case with provision for adequate background checks. Based on these two pieces of the national canons, this resolution appears to contradict the canons of the Episcopal Church that govern our diocesan bishop electing process. Cannot the standing committee extend the vetting process, since they developed the process, including that of including a petition process?
Apparently, that seems to be the case. I'm just saying that I don't believe in this particular instance it is necessary.
Not
a canon lawyer. You're not a canon. Yeah, I'm not a canon lawyer, so somebody else can speak to that maybe better than I can.
The next question is, does our current canons in the diocese need to be changed as well if this passes?
Again, I'm not a canon lawyer, but I would recommend that happen.
Next question. Are you concerned about checks and balances if this resolution passes?
No, I'm not. Primarily because from my experience on the nominating committee, the number of checks and balances that were in place by the people on the nominating committee were sufficient to ensure that we had adequate and great candidates for the Bishop of Southern Ohio.
The next question, the nominating committee is not elected. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The next question, do we know of any other diocese nationally that has eliminated both a petition process and a vote from the floor during convention? In other words, are there any other dioceses that currently function in the proposed way?
Not to my knowledge. There may be. I just am not, I have no knowledge of that.
The next question, do we need to refer this question to the chancellor?
Could be. I'm not sure what the chancellor's actual role is. It's my understanding that the resolution could be submitted as it is. So that's the way it was submitted.
And I would just add that I believe that the chancellor was asked this question. Am I correct, John?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
The next question is, what is the timeline needed for vetting?
Well, definitely more than 3 weeks. The nominating committee spent a year, so I would recommend a year, approximately, or however long the nominating committee takes. If the petition is done, process is done away with, and all candidates are required to go through the regular process, it would be much more in depth and much longer than the 3 weeks that is currently was held in this past election.
The next question says, does this have to do with the candidates who took this route?
No, not necessarily. I don't think it's fair to any candidate who would take that route. It's actually not the candidate himself or herself who takes the route. It's the people who have nominated them for that position. So they ultimately end up going through that process, but they're nominated by folks within the diocese. So they would have to agree to that. But it's not this particular candidate necessarily. It's any candidate who would be in that position. I don't think it's fair to them, and I don't think it's fair to the diocese.
The next question. Consider that this be taken care of by the standing committee as they develop the electing process that is then approved by convention via the rules of order. It's not really a question.
Yeah, I guess the standing committee could do that. I'm not a member of the standing committee, so I don't know. But I suppose that they could do that, although according to the national canons, it can also be done through convention.
The next question, since standing committee makes the final decision, why is it not appropriate for them to receive as many inputs as possible? Nominating committee was not diverse despite what was stated.
I don't agree with that. The nominating committee, I think, was quite diverse, as were the candidates that were presented that you received and that we received.
The next question, does a change in canons begin with a resolution, or does this need to be resubmitted at some point as a proposed canonical change?
I can't answer that. You'd have to ask the canon lawyers that question.
John Johansson, do you have anything to add to that?
You're on mute, John.
The notion to change the canons can come from any place, really. Resolution, it would be something that would be brought up through resolution and then goes to the chancellor's office and to the canon constitutional committee to be reviewed, but it can come from that suggestion can come from any direction.
The next question is, should the resolution state a cutoff date for applications? It only takes 2 weeks for a background check.
There's more to having a candidate be a proper candidate for bishop than doing a simple background check. There are, I believe, it's necessary to have conversations with the people, to have interviews with the people, to meet them in person with more than just the standing committee, but with a large group of people within the diocese. So, yeah, that's the way I would answer that question.
Okay. I do have this is not really a question, but a note. That the nominating committee had about 4 months from the time the applications were submitted to the time the slate was announced, not 1 year.
No, we started the process. It took about a year, and okay, so you're right that it was a less time for that, and that would be about right, probably 4 months. I misspoke earlier, I guess, on that. The whole process with us took about a year. That involved writing the profile and submitting that, all of which gave the nominating committee folks a really good insight into the diocese and the things that we needed from a bishop. And so that indicated that we were able to then look at the candidates, I think, in greater depth than others might be able to do as part of that process. But you are correct. The actual period of time for that was approximately 4 months. Again, it's still longer than 3 weeks, which is not very much time to evaluate candidates in depth.
The next question, can the petition process timeline be moved up and cut off to allow for candidates to be reviewed by nominating committee along with the other candidates?
I suppose anything is possible. That would certainly extend the time frame for the election. I suppose that would be up to the standing committee.
We do have a comment that said that they propose that a canon lawyer be present on Saturday to answer any questions that haven't been answered tonight. I know that there is much less time for discussion during convention, but that is something we can, the chancellor will be there and the parliamentarian. So either of them would be able to answer any questions. Let's see. Next question. Does it take a simple majority to pass a resolution? And
I'm not sure I can answer that. Somebody else could, I'm sure.
The answer to that is that it's a plurality. The most votes wins.
Okay.
It requires a majority.
Yeah.
It's here is a question. Given that this seems to be a more involved process than it is accounted for in the resolution, would it be appropriate to spend time developing an appropriate way forward, given that this is not an immediate issue, than to move forward with this resolution as it is?
That's possible. That would certainly make some sense.
And the next question is, has this resolution been brought up or workshopped with other dioceses? If this is an issue, it's unlikely that we are the only diocese who has faced this issue.
As far as I know, it has not, but I would agree that we are not the only diocese, I think, that has faced the issue.
The next question is, why should we limit ourselves to potential great candidates due to a resolution timeline vetting process?
I think that, as I said earlier, the current process does not allow for nearly enough time to do the vetting. And so if we eliminate the current petition process, then that would allow for enough time to actually vet the candidates and to vet them properly.
Next question is, would you be willing to withdraw this resolution at this time in order to address the questions already noted?
No.
Any other questions that you see, Julie, or from the floor? If not, Bishop, we'll turn it back to you at this point, sir. You're muted, Bishop.
It's a story of my life. I invite Canon David Gettrue, Canon for Budget and Finance, to present the proposed 2024 budget. David.
Thank you, Bishop. One thing I want to begin with is that the trustees of the diocese offered to every parish of the diocese a facility condition assessment that was brought up in the church foundation section. And 57 out of 71 parishes and dioceses has taken the diocese up on that offer. If your parish has not, please get in contact with me. It is now a condition to have facility condition assessment to receive a grant from the church foundation. So I believe the budget will come up on the screen. There we go. Great. Thank you, Rebecca. The Dawson Budget Committee received an increase of 14.5% increase in applications, a dollar amount of applications this year. They were only able to fund about 54% of those applications. One thing for all of your parishes to know, health insurance costs are going up 6.51% for 2024, and that is also reflected in this budget. As we typically do in this diocese, it's sort of Trinitarian in our budget process. I know everybody will be saying, we have 3 budgets in one. So you have the convention side of the budget, which is the second column that you see there. We have the William Cooper Proctor draw, or the William Cooper Proctor side of the budget. And then we have a side called other funds. These might be released from reserved monies for certain purposes, or might be coming out of endowments. And so we have that third column. The total budget for 2024 is $6.6 million. It parallels basically the 2023 budget. The mission share will generate $2.75 million. Actually, it's at the highest number it's ever been in the years that I've been tracking it. Box A of the Procure reports recorded at the highest level that they ever have. I believe that number was about 22 million. We will have some miscellaneous income in that first column there. The WCP annual draw rate is 3.5%. That is based upon a 12 rolling quarter average, and it's going to be $2.3 million. We have the endowment distribution. It's been in the reports, it's called consolidated endowment. It's what we call affectionately the 30 funds. That will generate $253,798. Then we have some funds that are held away, not in the control of the diocese. These are with trust companies, so we never know what we're going to receive from those. It'd be about $5,000. We have the CEP annual distribution for the bishop's salary. That's the Charlotte Elizabeth Proctor Fund. That is at $230,481. I'll explain that a little bit more when we get down in the presentation. Bishop's Residence Fund, $9,000. There is a large number. The interest in the checking account, since interest rates have gone up, we expect to generate roughly $96,000 for this budget in interest. We will transfer $200,000 over the draw from William Cooper Proctor Fund for the Reparations Task Force. We have rental income, as always. And then you get into all the basically designated funds and other incomes that come in. Faith and Life endowment distributions, $83,000. They're also going to release some money from their designated fund of $50,000 for the Faith and Life activities. The endowment draw from the Blanchard Fund, that fund's ECM, $51,844. And then we estimate some donations. Remember to donate to ECM if you would, individually, institution-wise, and also our Episcopal churches. And so then we move down to ECM. ECM, we've discovered a little bit of money. So we're releasing some of that so we can continue to make the distributions at $100,000. Down the lower section, and by the way, the third column is all color-coded so that when you start going down through the report, you see a number in that third column, you can correspond it back up where the income is coming from for that expense. We'll release $225,000 for the bishop's ordination and relocation expenses. We had money left over from the last general convention, so we kept that designated, and so we're pulling that out for the 2024 general convention. The Missioner Fund has money designated for it, so that will be released. IEES has money, it'll be released. The Leffler Fund goes to New Hope Church, that'll be released, and then donations for New Hope Church. So all that will generate $6.6 million. Next slide, please. At the top of the page, the slide here, pass-through ministries. Last year, we showed this a little bit differently to you and in this format. Proctor Camp and Conference Center will receive $130,000 from the convention side of the budget and $270,000 from the WCP side. Traditionally, we've been, well, not traditionally, but in the past several years, we've been pulling all the money for Proctor from the WCP side. However, with the amount of requests that we've had this year, we split that out between the convention and the WCP side. So that will be $400,000. The Church Foundation will receive $300,000 from the WCP side. So it's $700,000 off the 6.6 number. So that now leaves us for the rest of the diocese $5.9 million. So last year we started this section with outreach support. This year what we did is we just showed the chart of accounts. In the chart of accounts we have 6 budget groups. So you're just going to see everything intact according to the chart of accounts. So our line number for bishop's salary is 1-10-50110. And so what I need to explain to you now under the bishop section is this. Bishop-elect will be brought on before her ordination. So we have to pay her from the convention side of the budget. Once she becomes the bishop, then she can be paid from the Charlotte Elizabeth Proctor side. So that's why you see numbers in 2 different columns there. The same thing with the health insurance, has to be treated the same way, the HSA, the life and disability insurance. The other thing that is new this year, which we have not had to do for several years, is the pension. We're obligated as a diocese to pay the pension. We cannot pay that with the Charlotte Elizabeth Proctor funds. It is strictly forbidden in the trust documents. And then the other expenses, so there are normal expenses for the bishop and the bishop's office. The bishop's support staff, the executive assistant, the front office, these are all bundled up numbers here. You will see those go down through there. The salary wages at $414,000 and various other expenses in there. We can move to the next slide. So that section ends at $547,000. And then we have operations and HR. This is basically the necessity items of running the office. That's $24,000. One thing that we are negotiating, you'll see that there's a drop in the telephone and internet. Our contract is up. So we're negotiating a new package with Cincinnati Bell, and we expect to probably save about $20,000 with that new contract. Section 16 or Ministry Center 16 is communications office. That's Julie Murray and Canonical Communications. So there's funding for those requests there. And then we have section 18, which is IT and systems. That'll be at $85,000. You will notice that the computer hardware and software goes up. That is because the diocese has chosen to embark with Flux software. It's a grant writing software, so all grants in the diocese will go through a grant writing software. What will that allow us to do? That will allow us to track all of our obligations and will allow us to see everything that a person or a parish has received when it comes to grants, so we can give better reporting of where all the grant money is going in the diocese. Next slide, please. Finance department basically stays roughly about the same. Most of that is the cost of health insurance and cost of living adjustments there. The facility, you'll notice that the numbers jump around in this section from the previous year, which the previous year is that far right column. Last year we were looking at hiring a facilities person. We did not do that. We have a person on retainer for the facilities. And then you're going to see that line that's 52230 called repairs and maintenance, $112,500. $100,000 of that line item is reserved for our elevator modernization. In 412 Sycamore Street, the elevator keeps trapping people in it. So we must modernize the elevator. The total cost of that project will range somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000 to modernize that. And it will take approximately a year to do, with the elevator out of service for at least 3 months. We continue to control our utilities and our water and sewer costs. And then you move into our organization costs. We continue to spend less money on the retiree insurance expense. Next slide, please. And then in this, you will also see the bishop ordination relocation expense there at $225. So you see how that works in that third column there. National Church Pledge is $438,000. So that line parallels, well, it actually changes a bit from the previous year. One area that is new is the sesquicentennial. You will notice that we're funding the 150th anniversary, which will take place in 2025. The planning committee will receive $20,000 for 2024 to start the preparations for that. And then the reparations task force, and that I mentioned earlier, that is split out for the reparations task force to hire a missioner in that whole area. So when you go to section 1, DSO operations, bishop's office, the total expenses run $3 million, or just under 46% of the total budget. Next section we move into is formation. Those are just the costs of formation employees. Next slide. That continues on the cost of the formation office. Becoming Beloved Community is at $135,810. Now you're going to say, wait a second, the year before it was $204,000. Yes, that's true. It is because there's some compensation adjustments with Becoming Beloved Community, but most of the expenses of Becoming Beloved Community will now be paid for by Faith and Life. And so you'll see a big shift of monies into this formation section that will be paid for by Faith and Life. If you have questions about that, ask Canon Odin. Campus ministry will be reduced down to about $60,000. And then the education license ministry programs, those are normal costs that we have in there every year. Next slide, please. Diaconal school, those are basically same costs as previous years to run our diaconal school for our deacons in the diocese. And then family formation and youth, this is the whole youth program. Those are all the costs for that whole section there, and various expenses that they will have. Next section, next slide, please. Faith and Life. So here's the expenditure, all the Faith and Life money. So they'll be expending $131,000 in 2024. A new section that's been developed into this budget is New Episcopal Communities. Joseph Kovich is a missioner for New Episcopal Communities. So that just funds that whole section of the budget and is a priority of Bishop Smith that we work on New Episcopal Communities. The Commission on Ministry continues to receive funding. Commission on Ministry went through and they did a zero-based budget and they figured that they could cut their costs. And so they're at $36,000 compared to $47,000 for 2023. Next slide, please. Deacon and Priest program, that's the community of deacons, and our Fresh Start meetings. We're working on Fresh Start once again. Ordination ceremonies, I believe we'll have one more ordination next year, but our costs to the cathedral have gone up. So we need to account for that. That's why the increase is there. The new clergy program placement, which is also known as residency program, that's based upon how many residents we will have. Retired clergy, that is a budget request and parallels what it was last year. So for ordained licensed ministry, section 3, we are at $386,000. Group number 4 is our outreach and ministry support. In this section, you really have to know that we spend about 11% of our budget in grants and outreach. So a large portion of the budget goes out that way. So these are WCP grants made by the bishop. You might recall in the old budget it was called Institutional Associations Opportunity Grants. We bundled up under WCP grants by the bishop. Next slide, please. ECM. So ECM is showing in the budget, we hope to do $100,000 in grants next year, just like we did this year. Actually, we exceeded that this year, I think to about $130,000 this year. Commission on Congregational Life will be at $250,000 funded from both sides of the budget. Ecumenical Partners, this line has been in here for a long time. Mark and Ohio Council of Churches, we send $33,000 a year to Mark, $18,100 to Ohio Council of Churches. And then other expenses in regard to our work with our ecumenical partners. And then the missioner program, which has been added, we just added a missioner to Dayton. So we have 4 missioners now. So that's funding for that program. So total outreach and ministry support, we're at $767,000, 11.62% of the budget. Next slide, please. Section 5 is governance and TEC membership. So you will see in here the provincial synod will take place next year. General convention expenses, our Dawson convention, you will see that that number is reduced from previous numbers because we've already reserved that space and room rental. So we won't have that cost, and we're working to control the cost of Dawson conventions. Dawson Council, their expenses, and then in that section, you also have various resolutions that have come forward from Dawson Convention, and so they live there in that section. Section 5 is a total of $199,000. Next slide, please. Section 6 is our congregational ministries. Transitions office. What you will notice with transitions office is now the funding has had to shift all from WCP side to the mission share of the convention side of the budget because Ken and Michael Spencer is doing solely transitions and not congregational vitality. So we could no longer fund that section from the WCP side. So that moved all over into the convention side. Latino ministry, we're hoping to hire a missioner for Latino or Hispanic ministry. So there's funding for that coming from the designated fund and from the WCP side of the budget. Next slide, please. New Hope. New Hope is one of our new Episcopal communities in the Dayton, Ohio area. So that is funding for it. And then we have our parish support section where the finance office will work with parishes that have financial needs in regard to their accounting that we will help assist them with. We also provide HR services for parishes. So any rector, priest, or senior warden who has an HR issue, call us. We'll hook you up with an HR expert and have them direct you in what way you should go. And then websites, online presence. So the transitions or section 6 is $590,000. So that's $5.9 million. So it's a balanced budget being presented. The next slide is the church foundation budget. And we're just showing that basically they get the $300,000. The Proctor Farm income comes through them, passes out through them. $200,000. The church property grants, they'll be able to do $257,300 in grants next year. And the rest of the money pays for various expenses of the church foundation. That is the budgets for 2024. Let's go with the questions, Julie.
All right, we have 2 questions that are both related to the $225,000 line item determined for relocation for the bishop-elect. How was that determined? It seems a little excessive for moving from Indianapolis to Cincinnati.
If you had read the line said bishop ordination / relocation expense. So this is to put on the entire ordination and to move the bishop to Southern Ohio. So it's just a general catch-all for everything that takes place after the election to the ordination and bring the bishop on board.
Well, then I guess John Paddock's offer of doing it for half of that is moot. He said if it's $250,000 for relocation, he'll do it for half.
Yes. The next question, I can answer that one. Where do we see the WCP grants such as the energy efficiency program last 2 years? Well, that program ended in June, July of 2023, so you would not see it in 2024. Plus, that was all run through the church foundation and not through the diocesan budget.
And there are not any more questions at this time.
If anybody has,
there comes one. Once it's this question, break out the cost to move is 5,000, and that's generous. So the other amount is the rest.
I would actually say that probably $5,000 would be totally insufficient, because I know it cost me to move 1 mile a couple $1,000. So I would suspect that the cost to relocate a house from Indianapolis to Southern Ohio would be about $30,000. But remember, the ordination expenses are all in there. It's the cost of renting the facility, the cost of getting people here, flying in, whomever, hotel rooms, et cetera, et cetera. That's why that number is the number it is. If you would want to, I would talk to the 2 chairs of the transition committee, because they do have a budget, and ask them the various expenses, because they should be able to answer that.
And their contact information is on the Bishop's Search website, so
Yes.
it's easily accessible.
Yes. So anybody feel free to send me email about the budget or anything like that, or if you have any needs within your parish, please let me know. I did not make this as jovial as I've done in the past, Bishop. Probably the time change has affected me. It's my bedtime.
All righty then. Julie, where are we?
Well, we have just speeded through everything. So the only other thing, I do have a couple of little notes about the day of convention that may be of interest to people. If you have registered to attend virtually via Zoom, your Zoom link and your voting credentials will be sent to you on Wednesday. The Zoom link will be an email that comes from Zoom, which means that it could end up in your junk folder or your promotions folder if you're on Gmail. So make sure you check there before you email us and say that you didn't get it. That's where they typically will end up. The credentials will come in a separate email, which will be from me. So you'll see Julie Murray, and that's going to be your credentials, your voting credentials. That's going to come from me. If you're attending in person, we are beginning at 9 a.m. with morning prayer. We will be in the Vern Riff Center, which is a theater seating. We will not have assigned seating. You will be able to sit wherever you would like. And there is a map of the campus of the Shawnee State University campus on the convention webpage. And it'll show that there is a parking lot right next to the Vern Rife Center, which is an employee lot. Friday and Saturday is a holiday because it's Veterans Day. And so there will not be employees in that lot. You won't get ticketed for parking there. So you can park in that employee lot. When that lot fills up, you can look for the next lot, which is student parking. And again, that'll be okay because it's a holiday weekend. So you can park in either of those places. Lunch will be held on campus. It is a short walk from the Vern Riff Center to the Bear's Den, which is the student dining facility, which is where we will be eating. And shouldn't be too difficult for anyone to make that walk. It is very short. When you arrive, if you are coming in person, you will receive your voting credentials when you arrive. For everyone, whether you're either in person or online, about your voting credentials, those of you who are voting. If you will remember from previous conventions, or if you've never been to one, I'll explain this now. One of the things that are going to be in our ballot is going to be a voting credentials check-in. This is how we determine a quorum. So it's really important that you do that. So as soon as you arrive, or as soon as you will log on, if you're virtual, make sure you go to the balloting site, which is the same one we've been using for the last 3 or 4 years. It's Election Runner. So the URL is dso.electionrunner.com. There will be a link on the convention page to that so that you can get there easily. And that very first ballot is going to be for you to verify that you are actually present. And so it's really important that everybody does that as soon as possible. And that's how we get our numbers of voters and how we determine whether we have a quorum. There's a question about attending in person, downloading the voting app before we get to convention. It's not really an app. It is there is an app available through that voting site, but really you only have to go to that website. We won't have the limitations on the internet that we had at the cathedral, because we will be on a college campus that has fantastic high-speed internet. And it's a holiday, so there'll be low use. So that should not be an issue at all. And I think that's all that I
have. There's one more question, Julie.
Will there be any breakfast offered? It'll just be like it was at the cathedral in September, just little breakfast bars. I would plan to eat before you get there, but if you can't, there should be plenty of little snackies for you to eat. And lunch is supposed to be really good, so.
Okay. Well, first of all, I thank the panelists and those nominees and people who have made presentations tonight, and really everyone for being here. Your attention, your commitment of time for the life and work of our diocese really does matter. I'll see many of you this weekend in Portsmouth, and probably a few more on Zoom. But we'll find a way to be together. And I was looking at messages again. Julie, I close with a prayer. Yes? The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Also with you.
Let us pray. The blessing, mercy, and grace of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be upon you and remain with you forever. Amen.
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 Thank you all, and good night.